Lamborghini Huracan is coming to an end. But finally, we have the eagerly anticipated halo model, the STO. It's replaced the much-loved Performante, which, having driven quite a few of them on road and track, it has to be said is a hard act to follow. The only thing, if being a little bit picky, is that for what you might have classed as a track special, it was still a little bit roady. But this new STO, I'm told, is a totally different matter. It does come at a bit of a price though. £260,000 for the base model. And once you put any sort of spec on it like this, you're looking more like 330 plus. Now that's 50 grand more than a standard Evo. And for that, you don't even get any more power. Just 631 brake horsepower, which when you compare it to some of its rivals like the Pista or the 765 LT it's not really very much. Come to think of it, you don't really get very much anyway. I mean, there's no boot, no rear window, but this Lamborghini isn't for posers. This is a pure driving tool, just here to be enjoyed. Now the Pista and the 765 may have a lot more power, but in terms of being track specials, they're almost a little bit half-arsed like the Performante was. This has been stripped and is based not really on a road car that's been made a little bit more track-worthy, but more of a race car, the Super Trofeo, which has been toned down for the road. And that's why it looks like it does, because the bodywork is all of the aero bits that's come from the Super Trofeo. This harks back to a car more like the Ferrari 360 Challenge Stradale, which we recently featured. It's just got that rawness that you want from a track special. It's sparse, it's just bare carbon in here. It's just functional and it's here to excite the driver, which on this slightly damp road it's certainly doing that. Now there is another manufacturer who've stuck to their guns on what they think a track special should be about. And usually I will be handing over to our resident Porsche enthusiast, Matty P, to tell you all about it, but he wasn't available, so we had to draft in someone else. Some say he used to be the...
Gently, you better not be coming out with any some say lines.
It's Ben Collins, original Stig.
Now that Lambo is all well and good, but just because you want to take a car to the track does not mean that you have to be compromised in a road setting, because let's face it, 90% of your time is going to be spent on the road, going to and from these tracks to work and other useful things to be productive. And that is where the GT3 comes in, because at low revs I can pootle around with this car, not making brash noises, but when you start to open the tap, this car really comes to life. And in fact, you have to really rev this engine to get the performance and power, revving all the way to 9,000 RPM. That's several thousand higher than a turbocharged engine. That's where it is. That's where the performance is. Above 8,000, you get the full 500 horsepower, and you can really make the most of that on track. That's why these are so popular, because this naturally aspirated 4-litre flat 6 engine is totally linear. So you can take it to a circuit, you can really feather the power in the slow corners, you can feel your way out the hairpins and really feel that you're totally in control at all times. So the overall balance is really fantastic, but where I think this car has had a huge step change is the aerodynamics. The rear diffuser is producing 4 times as much aero downforce than the previous model, and overall this car is 60% more aerodynamic than the previous GT3, making this a real track monster. This bonnet, this rear wing, is basically straight off the RSR that just won the Daytona 24 hours, the Le Mans 24 hours for the last several years. And Porsche have taken that and they've applied it to this thoroughbred, go to the track, take it there on the road car. The GT3 has an all-new gearbox, 7-speed PDK, really cannot fault it. The paddle shift is just incredible. It's so seamless and fast. I love a manual, but when it's made this well, you just can't complain. You can have a 6-speed manual option for no extra cost, which I think is really cool. The Porsche have recognised people still want that purity of feeling if you want to go that route. Not actually sure which I'd go for. If I was taking this car to the track, I probably would take the easier option and go for the paddle shift. Having blasted around in the GT2 RS, really just found and needed it actually. You run out of gears so quickly, it's just easier just to whip through them. And this thing is really planted in this tight hairpin here. Just feel a little bit of understeer, but my impression is they have removed a lot of understeer that was inherent in GT3s. I don't know why. For decades, that has sort of been the way they handled. I don't know why it was. Maybe it was a weight or balance thing or chassis issue. But they have made huge changes with the suspension on this car to iron that out. And understeer was one of the things to be eliminated. So the front end is now twice as stiff as the previous model. They've achieved that by using double wishbone front suspension to make the car twice as stiff in roll, but they've made it supple by widening the front track, and that still retains that sense of suppleness, that weight transfer that you really need as a human being to be able to interpret what is happening at the front end. I think it's interesting that Jonty really went for that Lamborghini. He claims to have no passion for Porsche, which I think is interesting because Porsche themselves are all passion. They've been in motorsport since the 1960s with the 911. That is where the pedigree of these cars was born. Vic Elford won the European Rally Championship in a standard 911, just drove it from the showroom, spanked it around the European rally stages. And since then, 911s have been on and off the grid at Le Mans ever since. This car is really inspired by passion, and yes, the development by Porsche is glacial. That's their secret to not ruining the special sauce. They're very, very careful and measured in how they develop these machines. And one of my other favourite features in this is actually just the dash. I mean, there's this huge panoramic screen here, which is wonderful for the sat-nav, but when you look into the control room here in the office, these gauges are real. There's real dials here, and I think that's a lovely hark back to the past. There's a few LED bits of information, but the core info, revs, speed, is represented with real gauges, and I appreciate that. I'm an old school at heart. So those are all the things I like about the car. There are a few things I'm not so fond of. Mostly really is all this scaffolding in the back. I can't really see the point of it. I understand, yes, there's some torsional rigidity you could have, makes the car stiffer, a bit more performance. You could say it's a bit safer if you do flip the car into its roof. It won't cave your head in, but I mean, in practical terms, you can't use any of that space. You can't put a friend in the back. You can't put your luggage in the back. You can't really do anything in there. I just think it's a waste of space. I would get rid of it. That is an option you can put on these cars, and certainly that's how I'd spec mine if I had the choice. The other thing I can't say that I'm entirely fond of is the carbon seat. Again, in a race car, fair enough, you sit quite upright, you've got the big shoulder belts and all that business, but I quite like to have a bit of leather, a bit more comfort for a long journey and be able to recline the back and not sit quite so upright. Other than that, everything else is amazing.
That's a fair point, but since when have supercars ever had to make sense? Lamborghinis have always been about giving you that thrill, looking ridiculous, even though all those angular bits are actually quite functional, there's some serious work that's gone into this car to make it special. The wheels are now magnesium. The front bonnet, bumper and wings are now all one section of carbon fibre. And even the windscreen, they could have just stuck with the one that they use on the Evo, but no. They decided to make it a lot thinner just to save even more weight. So even though the STO looks a lot more macho than the Performante, it's actually 43 kilograms lighter. It's not lighter at speed though. All that tweaked aero means they've increased downforce by 53%. 53! Oh, those brakes are good. Carbon ceramics, obviously, from the Trofeo race car. And the turning is so much better. The Perf being four-wheel drive, it suffered that little bit from understeer, but the STO is now only rear-wheel drive, helping it save weight, and you can get that nose in so much better. The thing with the STO is, compared to that Porsche, it just doesn't sound as good as this, and I feel like I'm in a race car. I mean, listen to that. Rather than a puny little flat six, I've got a 5.2 litre V10. That double clutch gearbox it's a real gem. It may be pretty seamless, but they've just engineered in this little kick so that when you change up, it just gives you a little kick, just to remind you that you're in a Lamborghini. And that's what this car is about, and what I think the Porsche just lacks. I mean, fair enough. You know that if you're going to take that Porsche to a track, hammer it around all day, you can, and you drive it home. There's no chance of an issue, really. They're built so well. But for me, it just lacks some of that excitement.
There's a certainty with this car. It's just very poised, and it's a feeling you get as soon as you climb into it. Add a little bit of speed, the car just absorbs it, the downforce is there, it's working for you. Just really reassuring, and just helps you build confidence. And I suppose that's really why people want to take these to the track, because the car is kind of encouraging. There's no way you can max out the performance of this machine on the road, but in these slippery conditions you can feel the car working. This tight hairpin here, very hard to get to the limit of the front end actually. It's got tons of grip. It really does beckon you to the track. But it has got a wonderful poise. It's talking to you all the time. There's great feeling in the steering wheel. Even though it's electric power steering, there is feedback through the wheel. That's something that Porsche is really renowned for. If you're going to make a driver's car, you cannot numb the divining rod, which is the steering wheel, talking to you all the time through your hands and giving you a sense of how much grip is in the tyre at any time. Brilliant at braking and turning at the same time, which is all about that chassis balance. The lessons of Le Mans. Fantastic beast. I will give it to Jonty though. The Lambo does have a V10, very sweet, naturally aspirated. Makes a wonderful sound, but I just get the impression that it's quite nervous by comparison to the GT3. It's got less grip. I'm not certain it's producing anything like as much downforce, and that's just from a trip up here with him in the passenger seat. So I wonder what he's making of it in these twisty, wet mountain roads.
In fairness, you could look at either of these cars and They are both designed to just thrill you in whatever way. Alright, so this is really impractical. You can't really go away for the weekend in it. It's probably a bit too loud. You've got no boot to put anything. There's hardly even any space behind the seats, but if you want to go to a track and be entertained, then this does exactly that, and that's what it's meant to do.
Another point I'll concede to Jonty on the Lambo is that it is rear-wheel drive. You're going to go to the track, you don't really want four-wheel drive. It's always going to be nagging you around the apexes and just generally feeling a bit cumbersome. And pretty brave of Lamborghini to throw in a rear-wheel drive when most of their customers are glued to the road by their four-wheel drive systems. I'm sure that that will really resonate with STO owners who decide to take their beast to the track. But I bet they won't be driving with as much reassurance as the GT3 owners. And I don't care about the fact that the STO accelerates a little bit quicker to 60 miles an hour. Who cares? 3 seconds, 3.4 seconds. When grip starts to come into play, they're going to be in the rear view mirror.
The Porsche, Ben does have a point. It is a lot more usable. But if you've got another car to use every day, then does it matter? For me, not at all.
I think I've scared enough sheep for one day. Let's bring her back in. Bit of fuel, for me that is.
Naturally aspirated track-focused supercars are being hunted down at every corner by emission legislations, but Lamborghini and Porsche stood up and said no, not yet. Let us know in the comments which one you'd take, or maybe you've got an alternative choice. For now though, we're just going to carry on enjoying ourselves until we run out of fuel.